Today we're going to look at 3 camera tips to enhance your animations or films in Blender. Number 1. Use the track 2 constraint. So we've got our scene here in Blender, we've got our character in the middle of the camera frame, and if you look, the character is moving along a path currently on the roller coaster, and so goes immediately out of frame. So we could try and keyframe the camera to keep the character in frame, but it's much easier to add a track 2 constraint. So I'm here on the camera. If you go down to the constraints tab, which looks like this one, you can add a track 2 constraint. In this case, I'm going to choose doll. So now when we move the frames forward, you see that the camera tracks the character along. Okay, so if we now go into make sure we've got camera to view selected, we can also, if we move the camera, it will always focus on our character. As you can see, I'm moving the camera, it's always got the character in focus. Okay, another benefit of this is we can keyframe the location of our camera. If we come forward a bunch of frames, now we can move the camera, which is sometimes hard to do in the camera to view option. So if you come out of that, let's just move our camera along some of the axes. So let's move them along the y-axis, maybe let's go up a little bit, move it up on the z, and maybe closer to our character along the x. Let's just keyframe that. So we can be quite loose with this because we know, if we now look through the camera, it's always going to track along with our character, which is very helpful. Number 2, use depth of field. So we've got our very basic scene here, we've got our character here in the foreground, and we've got this signpost in the background. If we look through the camera, you can see we've got our character here in the foreground, the signpost in the background. Okay, so for depth of field, we want our character to be in focus and the background to be out of focus. Let's just go over to rendered view for a moment. Okay, currently everything is perfectly in focus, and that's because we've got no depth of field applied to our camera. So if I go to the camera and go to the camera settings, you can see I'm actually using quite a high focal length right now, but I'm going to add some depth of field. Okay, what I have also added is this empty, and that empty currently is right in the middle of the head of our character. So the empty is going to act as our focus object. So I'm going to choose empty. Alright, and right now our f-stop value, this is the value that controls the amount of depth of field. So this is quite high right now, but if we lower this, I'm going to lower this to around about 2. You can see immediately now the signpost in the background is kind of all fuzzy and out of focus. Okay, so f-stop, the lower the f-stop, the smaller the depth of field, and you can check out all the different real f-stops that are used on genuine cameras. So you can go kind of even lower than this and be even more out of focus. Okay, so another thing we can do is maybe we want the focus to change from our character to what the signpost is saying behind our character. So if we go back into viewport mode, if you're not seeing that you've got this out of focus in the background here, as you can see in my viewport mode, if you just click the button here on the right, you can select depth of field. So if you select depth of field there, you can see that you get this effect in the viewport as well, which is quite helpful. Okay, so let's just keyframe the empty. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the empty, which is our focus object, from our character to the signpost. Okay, so I'm just going to keyframe this location. Let's hit Z on the numpad so I can just very easily, let's just go forward 100 frames first of all. We can move the location now to be directly on our signpost. Keyframe that location. Okay, so now, as you can see, if I was to play that, the focus object moves from the character to the signpost. Okay, let's just end that on 100. Okay, so if we look through our camera, now we can see the focus changes from our character to the signpost. Let's see what that looks like in rendered view. Hopefully this looks okay on my computer. You can see. Go all the way forward now. The focus is very much on the signpost in the background, which is a nice cinematic effect that you can use to change the focus of the audience. Okay, so another thing that we can get from depth of field is a bokeh effect. So what I've just done here is I've created a number of spheres, which I've put really far in the background here, if you can see them, go all the way up here. And I've just given them a very basic material, just an emission material, strength of 20, kind of an orangey look. And if we go into our camera now and we take a look, you can see we get this kind of bokeh effect. So let's play around a little bit with the depth of field and see what it does. So if I was to change this up to say 16, we can see we can see them there in the background. Okay, but as we lower it, you start to see that you get that kind of effect and a nice bokeh effect. So the blades here as well affects the shape of the bokeh. So let's say 6 blades, you kind of get that hexagonal shape, or 5 blades would be more kind of pentagonal, or 8, whatever it might be, and that just gives it a little bit more realism, and that's what you would find on a real camera. They're the blades around the actual lens itself, and it controls the shape of the bokeh. Okay, so we'll leave that at 1, and there we go, there's some use of depth of field. And finally, number 3, use the noise modifier. Okay, so in this scene I've got my character here on the roller coaster, and I've got the camera which has been parented to our character, so it follows him down on the roller coaster. Okay, so as you can see, it's actually pretty smooth right now, and it doesn't really look like he's going that fast because of that reason. But what we can do is we can add some keyframes to our camera, and then we can add some noise to shake the camera to make it look like he's going faster. So the first thing I'm going to do is just create some keyframes on the camera. I will just duplicate that as well to go to the end of the shot. Okay, and what I can do is create a second screen here, and it goes to the graph editor. So in this case, I actually want to affect the X rotation. So I'm going to turn all of the others off. I'm going to normalize it, and let's make this a little bit bigger. Okay, and we're going to add in on the X rotation, press N, and you get this modifiers option here on the right. Add modifier noise. I get this really big noise, so let's just scroll out of that a little bit so we can kind of see it. Okay, that's much too big. If we play that now, we get this crazy camera shaking going on. So it's just a case really of messing around with the settings. So scale controls how frequent the shake occurs. So let's just start with strength. I'm going to turn that right down, 0.1. Even that seems a little bit high, so I'm going to turn that down to 0.05. Okay, we just get like a nice subtle shaking. Okay, the scale looks okay, really, but maybe just a little bit slower. Okay, I can also restrict the frame range as well, so if I turn that on, I want it to start at frame 50, just as he kind of goes over the edge here, and then it starts getting faster. And let's have the end to be our end frame. Okay, so you can see how that now affects the shape here. It doesn't start until frame 50. If I press play, we get this shaking effect, which really sells that he's going really fast on this wooden roller coaster. So it's quite a powerful effect. It's really easy, just a few clicks. It's best used to be nice and subtle with it. Don't overdo it, but it can really help. Just add that little bit of realism to your camera movements in your scene. If you found this tutorial helpful, please like and subscribe. Bye!